Hi, I'm Cameron. This is Stina, that's Suki, and that's Bramble. We've been renting flats most of our lives, and now in our early 40s we finally managed to buy our forever home. It's not much, only a fifth of an acre, and it's seen far better days, but it's our little piece of rural southwest Scotland. We're excited to start its transformation into a cosy cottage and food forest garden that we know it can become. So welcome to Bramble Cottage. This week has been super busy at Bramble Cottage. We need to get a few things done ahead of the winter to make sure that we actually have harvests and plants and things ready for next season. Stina's been planting on some broad beans and putting them in the ground ready. Stina went foraging for some food on site to see what we have here and what gaps need filling. We'll get to try the meagre bounty later. We have placed some new raised beds outside, which had me raking over a whole area of gravel and removing probably about a ton of gravel. But first, we needed to make a trip to our old house to make sure it was in good order still. It's still on the market, but we managed to harvest a nice little gathering of fennel.
This is the first food forest I ever tried to set up in our tiny little back garden in the middle of a town. It's less than 5 years old and not nearly as far along as I'd have hoped it would be by now, but this garden was completely barren when we first arrived. So I'm really happy with what we've achieved here, because by adding plants and working the soil, we've gradually seen birds and insects revisit, and now during the summer months the air's just alive with movement, which is really nice to see. This fennel has been self-seeding really happily in this garden since I first planted it 5 years ago, and so when we came back this time it desperately needed cutting back to make it tidy for sales purposes, but that was why I decided to just try and salvage what we could from it, take it back with us, lots of fresh fennel seeds, and see what we could do with them. Since I did my first pass, Cameron spent some time picking them over further to clean them, and then made some fennel flavoured bread with some fresh seeds, and the rest are now in a radiator, just gently drying out. I had this old bag of broad beans that I knew from last year were increasingly unviable, so I've decided to do a little broad bean hack by sprouting them in this sprouter just to find out which beans are viable before I go planting them up and wasting pots and soil on them. So from my whole bag of broad beans I have 3 viable seeds, which you can see growing on in the background there. They're from a few weeks ago, and then another 3 seeds here that I'm about to pot up, and then I've just got a few more left that I'm going to soak and then put in the tray to see if they sprout, and I'll pot them up if they do. These paper pots are really too small for broad beans, but right now it's a sort of make do and mend situation, so I don't want to be buying in anything new unnecessarily, and I just happen to have these. I do have some root trainers somewhere for reuse, but we've just moved here and there's boxes of stuff everywhere, so it's hard to find anything. These are the latest broad beans that I've had soaking in a cup of water for at least a day, and now I'm putting them in the top of the sprouter and going to see if they sprout at all. Time to harden off the bigger broad beans, and luckily we have a drafty porch with a leaky roof that will be perfect for doing that. We're new to Bramble Cottage, and so far I've added very few edible plants to this site, so I'm about to do what I like to call a food forest challenge. I used to do these in my old garden as well, and that's to go around the site and harvest anything that's edible from the plants that I've added and also stuff that was already on site, and just see what I can build up to make something like a salad. And then the real challenge is to see what the gaps are and then improve what I've got growing here so that it's better this time next year. So let's go see what we can find. So first we have Rumex acetosa, which is common or garden sorrel, I believe. I transplanted this one from our old place early on when we came to Bramble Cottage, and it's been doing really well. It gives a fantastic lemony kick to salads, but we only need a few leaves from this plant because that lemony kick could be overpowering, but also it's caused by oxalic acid, which for anyone with, say, kidney problems or whatever, can cause kidney stones, so it's not something to be used in overly large quantities. Still a really good winter leaf though. And here's another lemony plant that I transferred from our old garden. It's lemon balm or Melissa officinalis, so this might end up being quite a lemony salad. This one I've planted right under the trees because they can be a bit of a thug, and I needed something that would grow under here, so I'm just going to see if it copes with being in this space. Anyway, nipping out the tips should help it bulk up, and it's still going strong, so it seems like a good one to add to the salad in small quantities because it's a little bit hairy and not overly palatable, and the older leaves would be a bit bitter, so I'm just taking the tips of this one. Now here's one that actually was on the site when we arrived. It's some sort of species of viola, and I think maybe Viola odorata or Viola raviniana, so that's the, I don't know what odorata is, smelly violet, and then the raviniana is the dog violet. When it was in flower, I didn't get to see that many flowers, but it seemed to be pink, so I'm not entirely sure what species it is because most of them have purple flowers. At any rate, all of them have edible flowers and leaves, but not necessarily very palatably so. So I'm going to take a test leaf for myself now. So here we go. Actually, that's really not bad at all. It's a very mild flavour, not remotely bitter, so it would make a great salad leaf to add bulk and texture. I'm only going to take a few for them now because although I'm really confident about the genus, it's always a good idea to know exactly what you're picking before going too far. And then even if you do know exactly what the plant is, if you're not familiar with eating it, you need to sort of know that you can tolerate it, so it's good to start small initially. I should add again that I'm taking just the tips of the leaves from these, not any of the older leaves, because the older ones are likely to be quite bitter. So I'm just looking for the fresh, new growth, so to speak, and just taking a little bit of that from each plant so that we get the milder, more palatable stuff. This is the salad so far. And to be honest, we've got more green leaves than I thought we would have at this stage, but maybe a few too many of the rumex, the sorrel, because that's going to be quite strong, that, so it'd be nice to get some more in the way of leaves that don't taste too strong, but I'm just not sure I have much of that at the moment. Here's my little alpine strawberry that I planted in this dark corner when we first arrived. You can see that I had to cut through the plastic and pull it back to make room for it and pull away loads of gravel like we have to do everywhere on this site, but it's been doing really well since then, and the leaves of strawberries are edible, so I'm going to take just a few of those to help bulk up the salad. These are my raspberries that I transplanted here from our old place just a handful of weeks ago, and these raspberries were already on the plant when I transplanted them, which obviously checked its growth, and so they haven't quite ripened, but I've tasted one of them and it seemed okay, so I'm going to pick the two others that were on the bush for our salad. This is one of the most amazing food forest plants I've ever known. It's a globe artichoke, or Cynara cardunculus green globe cultivar, and I had these in our last place and they just grew and grew and grew, and I could take a leaf of this and add it to the salad, but I want this to grow big and strong, so I'm going to leave it alone for now. This is Althea officinalis, or marshmallow. Not everybody means the same plant when they say marshmallow, so this is the most common one in the UK, and the leaves of this contain a mucilage that makes it almost chewy if you add it to a salad, but it's also a little bit hairy, so it's a really nice sort of texture to add to a salad as long as there's not too much of it in there. So here we have it. Here's my salad, which is predictably meagre, but it's something, and now I know what wasn't available on site. There were a few other plants that I could have picked, but they were either so small that I just didn't want to bother them this time of year, they need a bit longer to bulk out, or there was a hawthorn tree that I just couldn't reach, so I need to sort out a ladder to try and get to that. But otherwise, this is everything we have at the minute, and so this is going to be my justification for doing some emergency vegetable purchases for our pallet collar beds.
In an effort to increase the amount of planting space that we have on site, we're going to be removing quite a lot of the gravel that's around the place. At some point in the history of this property, somebody thought the gravel was the best thing ever, and there is gravel everywhere, and there is plastic underneath the gravel everywhere, and basically it's just going to be a big old job for us to clear all of that gravel away so that we can see a bit more of the earth and decide what to do with those spaces. To try and make it a little bit easier, I'm looking for the edges of the plastic and the Mypex, so that I can actually just roll the gravel up into the middle and it creates its own little mound, which I can then just pick up, put in the barrow and take away to where we're going to be holding it for the time being. Anyway, I think you get the idea. Let's fast forward a little bit. So after all of that removal of gravel, this is what the area looks like. Stina actually asked me to put out one of the pallet collars in the corner, and I made a small mistake, which Stina pointed out at least once later on. Comment below if you can spot the deliberate mistake that I made. Having harvested some of that really nice fresh fennel from our garden in our old property, it felt like a really nice thing to try and make some bread with some of that fennel. Here you can see me just sorting out those first little fronds or little heads, and this is going to take me a little bit of time, but it was worth doing. I think the result looks really beautiful. I love that green. That is such a nice green. And that's going to be great to put into the bread itself. My standard method is just to mix the wet with the dry, or dry with the wet as it were. At this stage I'm starting to question some of my choices in terms of flour. The flour that I picked out from the cupboard was an organic rye, very strong flour, and I thought very strong, great. That's going to make a lovely loaf. But it seems a bit too strong. it's not acting in the way that I hope, and at this stage I was hoping it would rise. Time to set it somewhere warm for an hour or so. Well, it's been left to rise for an hour and a half, and I don't think it's moved a millimetre. I don't think it's rised at all, but I'm going to go through the motions and see what we get at the end anyway. optimism still in my heart, I decided to roll these into bun shapes in the hope that they would rise and turn into something other than the boulders that you see before you. So I've shaped them into 8 very grey dough balls there, and I'm going to set them to one side again for another hour or so to see if I can get any extra volume out of them at all. 1 hour later, no signs of rising. Off to the oven with them. After cooking for 20 minutes, they're now out of the oven. Pretty similar to how they went in, just hot. My optimism says that they probably still taste good, so we'll find out about that at the end of the video.
This is prep for planting up the broad beans. I have a barrow full of soaking wet multi-purpose compost because someone left it out in the rain, and then I also have a barrow full of really quite awful soil and rubble with litter in it that I emptied out of an old broken planter that was here when we arrived. And so I'm going to mix the two together because I don't want to waste anything on this site, and I don't have a huge amount of mulch or compost available. So I'm doing a kind of 2/3 rubbly soil to 1/3 compost to try and make a decent mix, and I'm picking the litter out as I go. I'm planting the broad beans up in this potato sack because we have rabbits here, and I don't have that many areas where I can plant into the ground and reliably cordon off for rabbits. So at some point I need to put proper rabbit fencing around my main lawn area that's going to be a sort of full garden, and then in the veggie area we're just going to have sort of modular rabbit protection. But for now I thought if I plant in this and then fold up the sides, it should be tall enough that the rabbits can't bother them too much, but we'll find out if I'm right or wrong about that. I'm just going to very loosely tie the broad beans to the canes to help hold them in position because they've gone in a bit leggy and they're not holding themselves up very well at all at the minute. By doing it loosely, they should still get wobbled about in the wind, and then that usually helps them develop a stronger stem. It sort of stimulates the right hormones to thicken up where they need to. And here comes my rabbit protection. We'll see how it goes. There are random box plants planted in various places across this site. I think one or other predecessor thought they could plug holes in hedgerows with them. I don't know what you all think about that. I'm not sure it works. So I want to pull them all out a bit by bit and then move them into what we hope will one day be our shady garden. This is also just making extra space for paths around pallet collars so I can have the biggest possible veggie patch in this corner of our site. And this corner gets a reasonable amount of south and west sun, so it just seemed like the best place to try and put the veggie garden without taking up too much room in the main garden area that we have. This is the point at which I noticed that Cameron's managed to put the whole pallet collar together upside down. Much faff involving pruning saws, secateurs and pickaxes later, and we have our level pallet collar approximately 45 centimetres from the wall, making best use of space and ready to be filled and planted. I'm filling it here with more of my planter rubble that's full of bits of litter and detritus, and then I'm going to put a layer of multi-purpose compost on top, so that I make sure that the plants that go in have at least something with some nutrition in it too. Although there's quite a lot of potash in this rubble as well, because I think somebody emptied a fire into the planter once, I'm not sure. All we can say is stuff went on in this house before we moved in here, and we're not really sure what that stuff was, but it's interesting to find the remnants of quite a lot of it, including socks in the compost and pyjamas in the shrubbery, that kind of thing. After doing my food forest challenge, I made some emergency purchases for plug plants from eBay so that I can stock my new palette colour. These are the red chard, just arrived and needing a bit of water because they were pretty dry. And here are the rest of the plants that I've just received. So I've got red chard and leek musselburgh, which is a cultivar that grows particularly well in Scotland, and I've grown it once before in our old garden, and it did seem to grow really well, and it flowered beautifully in our absence after we decided to move, and we never got to try any of it. So this is going to be a second attempt at that one. And then the third thing I've got here is some spinach. I don't currently remember what variety that was. All of these plug plants arrived in really good condition, and some of them contain multiple plants per plug, so actually it was great value for money, and I've split them out as best I can to get as many plants from each one as possible. As mentioned, I forgot my watering can at the other end of the country, but I remembered to bring my rose. So this was a failed attempt at combining that with a glass bottle, but hopefully it worked a little bit, I don't know. And finally, just a bit of mulch around each side of the pallet collar. So eventually we want to mulch this entire area between several pallet collars that we want to put down, but I don't have a huge amount of mulch available at the minute, and so I'm just going to go into the corners with this so that we don't stir up the mud whenever we go to look at the veg. And so that's the second pallet collar down and mostly planted up. I'm still waiting for a final purchase, which will be some elephant garlic to go in that fourth row there. And this contraption is Frankenstein's cloche. Well, no, Cameron's cloche. He made me this wooden frame a little while ago, and we planned to use it in a slightly different way, but we suddenly thought if we put some chicken wire across this at speed, then I've got something to protect this bed from the rabbits for the time being. I actually think it's going to work really well.
Right. Yeah.
Where's the rest?
That's everything.
No.
What have you got for us?
Right. I've got... Are you putting stuff in your roll?
Yeah.
As you eat it? Right.
Go for it.
Then you'll be wanting at least one Rumex.
Okay.
Sorry, sorrel. We have a strawberry leaf.
Looks very
got
nice.
a remix and a strawberry leaf on mine as well. And then we've got one marshmallow leaf between us.
Okay.
So I'm going to fold that up and make it into.
It's okay if you don't quite get it down the middle, it's fine.
There we go.
Oh, thank you.
There we go. And then what else have we got? We've got,
Lemon?
there's a viola. I think that's all. No,
Oh.
There's a viola leaf for you. And yeah, you can have a lemon balm. And
Wow.
then I'll have a better lemon balm. There's a lemon balm for me. There's a viola for me.
Okay.
Somehow yours are all big.
Well, mine just looks nice and yours doesn't. There you
And then you'd be wanting your raspberry.
go. Yeah, but I think I want that separate.
So we've got our sad looking raspberries.
Are they meant to be yellow?
No. But they did, so there were 3 on the bush. I tasted one and it was alright. Is that okay?
Yep. So
Right,
I'm going to have that.
I'm putting mine in my sandwich. I don't know if your cannonballs are going to work.
I'm going to have mine open top. The raspberry...
I was going to stuff the stuff into the bread roll, but the bread roll is not very stuffable.
No, you know when you put butter on bread, normally the bread gives?
Yeah.
It didn't give.
So
Right.
this is like a really thick, crisp bread. Right.
It's called... Okay. That's pretty good.
Bread is tasty. Just not easy to eat.
I see the sheep bones.
There's a yellow sheep.